Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live stream, which I think is going to be really exciting tonight. We are looking forward to this so much. Um, I need to
A
find
lot
my,
of interesting stuff to
yeah,
talk about.
I lost my chat already because I popped it
Oh,
out because I'm going to share my screen and we're watching a video tonight, which I think you guys are really going to like. Um, and if you saw from the thumbnail, you'll know that we're talking about are we in a simulation, but it's actually a lot more than that. And when we get to the area where we're talking about the simulation, you'll see why. Let me just find my chat so I can say hi to you guys. There
yeah,
it
there's a
is.
lot of people in here already.
I know.
Already. Storm
I
Delta,
know.
hello.
And I saw Ren
Mistress
changed her name.
Angelica and Rebecca Blanchard, hello. Oh,
Hi, Lee. Thank you.
Buckdo,
Hi,
hello. Lots of
Buckdo.
familiar faces. I
Okay.
think you guys are really going to like this stream. We've been wanting to have this one for quite a while, but we've been saving it. And there's a lot of exciting stuff to talk about.
We've been teasing you for a while. Hi, Cassidy. Hi, Laura. Hi,
Hey, Sam
Mistress.
Ways,
Hi,
and
Lisa.
thank you, Lee.
Oh, Philip, you gifted somebody. Who got it?
I didn't see anybody get it, so maybe a new person has to come in. I don't know.
Oh, that's weird because we have people in here who need to get one. Oh,
That's
maybe
what I saw.
is it delayed? That's weird. Um, where Ren, what did you change your name to? I'm trying to find it. And why did you do that? This is a long
Hi,
name.
Elise.
Athanasia. Oh, is Elise in? There's Elise. Yes, she's our newest moderator, you guys. Hi, Becca. Um, I can keep calling you Ren. Thank goodness. Hi, Sam. Did we miss anybody? Hi, Mark. Thank you for coming. It's so nice to see the blue. And I think that's everybody. Okay, we better get right to it. You know why?
Yeah, we
Because
have a lot of stuff. Oh,
thank you, Morg.
thanks, Morg, for the super chat.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And Morg, if you have time to stick around, I think you'll find this interesting. But links are below, by the way, you guys. I
Yeah, other videos.
Yeah, and I'll fill you in on some other stuff later, Morg. If I know that you're super busy. But I know that this topic is something that you'd really like. I think all of you guys are going to find this interesting. So let's just give you the little backstory on this and then just get right into it. So, uh, Philip and I discovered Donald Hoffman. Oh, I love the Rubik's cube. Um, we discovered Donald Hoffman and became really interested because he is one of the very few scientists you come across who has who's realized, come to the conclusion that space-time is not fundamental. And that's rare. You don't come
Yeah.
across that very often. So became really it became really important to us. We were just fascinated to find out what is the overlap, like where are his edges to how much he agrees with everything that we talk about. And I mean,
Well, it's intriguing to hear something like that come from a self-confessed material scientist. Like he even says he
yes.
disagrees with his colleagues, but he studies things that he disagrees with, but he still respects his colleagues.
Oh,
You know, so
very much
we're
so.
gonna look at some of the stuff that he says that is just so intriguing.
Yeah.
And we kind of wanted to explain the thumbnail a little bit because it's kind of grabby with the VR headset. But you guys will see in this video, Donald Hoffman uses the VR headset as an example, and he kind of uses the metaverse metaphor. And so he talks about how our evolved perceptions of space-time, which would be our senses, is basically like playing the game of life without knowing what runs the game. So that would be like the electrical impulses behind the VR headset. So there is something behind space-time, and we're trying to figure out exactly what he means. And so we're going to get into that just a little bit.
Yeah, I have an entire list of questions that that I've made over things that I would ask him if I was, talking to him. I've watched quite a few of his videos, and again, I've put the links below. I started with a really long one by that Lex Friedman. But I don't recommend. I picked a different one to show tonight. The Lex Friedman one was great, but this the one we're showing tonight is the channel is Tom Billiou, and I liked him as an interviewer because he's very cognizant of how much he understands, and he doesn't let Hoffman get away from him too much. But also, he's very cognizant of the level of understanding of his audience, and he doesn't want us as viewers to get lost. So I really like that because
he takes the time to expand on what Donald Hoffman's actually saying, because
yeah,
I know you said you kind of hang on by your fingernails in a lot of points.
yeah, I was hanging on by my fingernails, but so was Tom. You get the feeling that you are at the same kind of in the area of understanding that he is. So he doesn't let you get completely lost. There's a few times where Donald Hoffman gets, very excited. Oh, Cassidy got gifted. Thank you, Elise. Thank you so much. But anyway, I don't want to take up too much time. I just wanted to say that Hoffman is a cognitive scientist out of University of California, Irvine, and I watched a different one of his videos where he talks about his current work, and it was very exciting. I believe he is trying to find a way to show that you go from consciousness to what we think of as the material world. That was really difficult for me. I'd have to watch it many more times, but it was really interesting as well. And I just want to point out one more thing about him. He uses the word consciousness a lot. I don't know if it was so much in this particular interview, but normally he does. And we have to define what he's actually saying, because he means mind the way we use the word mind. When he says consciousness, I'm almost 100% sure. A lot of people do this, as you know. They don't have a difference. They don't differentiate between mind and consciousness the way we do. And one of the things that I would ask him about if I was talking to him is I would try to find out whether mind would be something that he would use instead of consciousness, because consciousness can be confusing when people use that. Right. So thank you, Laura, and thank you, Lee. Lee just went up to Wavelet. So appreciated, and thank you so much, Laura.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
and also, yeah. I was going to say, if you guys are interested by this video that we're about to show you, feel free to invest the time to watch the whole thing, because there's so much great stuff in there. We're only going to be able to show you a couple snippets today, but if you really enjoy what we're showing you and what we're discussing, I really recommend watching this video with Tom Billiou interviewing Donald Hoffman.
I think it's the first one below, but then I also put in several others that I've watched, and one that I think I'm in the middle of watching. You can just search for his name on YouTube, and oodles of videos will come up. He is everywhere. He does interviews all the time, and he has for years. You'll find so much. Charlotte, thank you so much. I'm welcome. Glad you're here, and I hope that you find this. Yeah, thank you for the super sticker. I think you guys are going to find this really interesting. So what I need to do now, and this is something that, again, Jan taught me how to do, which is to share my screen, and give me a second while I get that set up. And I have the video ready to go. We're not going to watch the whole thing. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes or something, and we don't have that kind of time. I have things timestamped. We're going to skip over, but you would like the whole thing, I'm sure. So I need to share my screen. So share screen, hit the share sound, hit share, run over to Zoom, and put in, not Zoom, but yes, but now I have to close this. Now tell me something. What are you looking at, Philip?
like a analytics page.
Okay, hang on. I got to just get off of this page. Oh, you know what I didn't do? Hang on, I have to stop share. One of the things I have to do is pull down. I can't get to the top of my thing. I can't get to the top unless I pull this down. So let me do that a little bit. And okay, now we go back over to here. Jan would laugh because I have to talk myself through this. I know. Share screen. Okay, share screen. Okay, and I just want to get over to here. Tell me what you're looking at, Philip.
I see the video.
You do. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to just pull this up a little bit. I'm going to take us and no, I think we can stay here. We can stay over here. I have the transcript up too, but I think that's okay. And I think I want to go to this view. Okay, sorry you guys, just bear with me for a second.
It'll be worth it.
Yeah, oh, here, I have to rewind the video. I was watching it.
Donald Hoffman, welcome back.
Okay, I'm watching it on super fast speed. Let's just here. Also, if there's commercials on here, oh, there shouldn't be, because I'm logged in as my account, which is commercial free. Okay, let me just hit play for a second.
To the show. Thanks a lot, Tom. It's great to be here.
Okay, perfect. I just want to get the chat up, and then I think we'll be good to go.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm getting better at this. I'm still not great. Can you see my chat screen, Philip? Oops.
Yes, I can, but it's behind your.
It's behind us. Yeah. Okay, that's too bad. It is what it is. Okay. All right, let's go, people. This is Donald Hoffman here, and the other guy is Tom. And off we go. And oh, tell me if the sound is loud enough on the video.
Dude, excited to have you back. So I'm obsessed with the Matrix and the idea that we're living in a false reality. Now, I know you don't believe that we are actually in a simulation, but do we recognize the truth of reality?
Well, our best science tells us that space-time is not fundamental. This is the conclusion of both physics and evolution by natural selection. So the physicists tell us that space-time is doomed, it's not fundamental, and they're finding new structures beyond space-time, like the amplitude-hedron, that actually make the math easier in space-time for the things they need to do. And then evolution by natural selection also agrees with the physicists that space-time is not fundamental. And
let's explain that. So when you say that space-time isn't fundamental, what do we mean exactly?
Okay, is it lagging for anybody else?
I think it's just while your video loads because it's such a long video.
Oh, okay. I got it. All right, let's just keep going. So I like Tom because right off the bat, he's asking, you can see that he's really trying to understand what Hoffman is saying, but that's fine because we're in the same boat.
Like the simplest, or we'll get into the geeky, like deep stuff in a second, but for the audience that hasn't heard you talk before,
right?
What does that mean?
Well, we tend to think of space and time as the basic level of reality. Everything that could possibly be is inside space and has some time. The Big Bang was the start of it all, and who knows what the end will be, maybe a big crunch or just petering out in low entropy and low temperature, we don't know yet. But that, we think, or we thought, is the basis of all reality. So space and time are the basic stage on which all of reality plays out. And
how can it not be, though?
That's the weird thing. Yeah.
Does that mean that whatever is real, and we should probably give people your headset metaverse explanation, which speaks dear to my heart, but before we do that, does that mean that whatever is real is non-physical?
Well, so the word real is a little slippery. So in some sense, my headache is real, right? Because it's a real experience. But real in the sense that the physicists are talking about it, when they thought that space and time were fundamental, they were thinking that this was the fundamental ground of all possible realities. Like in a Newtonian universe, and even in Einstein's point of view. Einstein thought that space and time was the grounding reality for everything. And now we realize that the 4 dimensions of space-time or even 10 dimensions of string theory or something like that, is not going deep enough. There are structures entirely beyond space-time and entirely beyond quantum theory. So these new structures are not like little structures sitting inside at the small scales of space-time.
I don't think we can get to structures yet. People are going to be super lost. So
okay,
the idea of the
I love the way Tom is like, don't go there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just
you can tell that he's intrigued, even just 3 minutes into the interview. He's like, I need to know more about what you're describing to me.
He's like this throughout the entire video, and I felt very much like him, which is why I relate to the way he responds to this. Whereas some of the other interviews I've seen, they're either a little bored because they can't figure out what's going on, or they're trying too hard. I love Tom's approach. This is the best one I've seen so far, so that's why we're sharing it. Notice that Hoffman pointed out that the majority of point of perspective belief is that there is just space-time, starts with the Big Bang, ends with wherever it's going, but that there's nothing beyond it. Okay, and okay, we have another minute or so.
Headset, I think, is a really core concept. So somebody asked you once, like, in the future, we're going to start using different metaphors. What metaphors do you think we're going to use? And you said the metaverse. As somebody trying to contribute to the metaverse, my ears perked up on that one.
Right.
Why will that become such a useful metaphor for this moment and how we perceive things?
Right, because the way that evolution speaks on this is it says that our perceptions of objects in space and time is really just like a virtual reality headset. It's there to help you play the game of life without knowing what's on the other side of the headset, what's on the other side, what's the hardware and software that's running the game. You don't have to know that to play the game. And in fact, if you were trying to play a game of like Grand Theft Auto in virtual reality, and you had to toggle millions of voltages per second to drive your car, you would lose when you were competing with someone who could just turn a nice little simple steering wheel and press on a artificial gas pedal. So evolution gave us senses that allow us to survive by hiding the truth and just telling us how to act. So as the evolutionary theorists would say, our senses guide adaptive behavior.
Why does natural...
Notice that the stuff he just said was what we just happened to do in our last video where we talked about the senses,
Yeah.
And he talks a lot more about this, which is fascinating. I hope you guys every time I do something, I lose
Even though he's using the analogy of the VR headset, he's still talking about how you would be overwhelmed by all that data in order to play the game of life, and why we don't experience all that additional data. And it's the same with our senses.
Yeah.
We only experience that limited part of reality in order to survive, to get by.
Yeah. And thank you for your comments, Mark. The necessary education is available for free without college. That's awesome. People should look into those kinds of things. I have taken many courses myself at no charge or a very, very small charge. Just good to know for the people who want to do that. And I'm going to lose the pop out again. It's really annoying, but there we go. Okay, Philip, you have to remind me because you don't have the control like I do. If there's something that you want to say, put your hand up or just tell me stop and I'll do that. I forgot to tell you to do that. Sure. All right, let's just yes, I agree, Laura. All right, let's just keep going.
Selection as a theory predict that? Because I understand the theory, I guess, well enough at a high level, but I never would have guessed that it actually says, that it makes a prediction anyway, that whatever is real, the only thing I can tell you that evolution has selected for is not that. Right. So is this something that Darwin himself saw in his theory, or would he be surprised?
I think Darwin would be surprised. And in fact, many evolutionary theorists today are surprised. And
so how do we know this isn't just a kooky interpretation of natural selection by Donald Hoffman?
Exactly. So
Okay, he's going to start explaining evolutionary game theory, which is really interesting. Um, I don't know the depth that he goes into it. There's a lot more information that you can look it up yourself. I thought this was absolutely fascinating. So we have a few minutes of this.
The way we pursue this is, it turns out that Darwin's theory has been turned into a mathematically precise theory. It's called evolutionary game theory. So John Maynard Smith started that in the 1970s. And so we now have, instead of, Darwin's theory, which is, it's imprecise in the sense that it's not a mathematical model. Evolutionary game theory, evolutionary graph theory are mathematically precise. So we can now prove theorems. And we can ask technical questions. So what is the probability that natural selection would shape any sensory system of any organism to reveal any true structures of objective reality? That's a clean technical question. And it turns out that evolutionary game theory is precise enough to address that question.
Okay, so I know I've gotten hung up on that a lot, and I think for people of my cognitive ability, we will have to accept that as the miracle of this conversation. Otherwise, we'll derail on that, because I don't understand how his theory can be turned into a math equation, and I worry that for you to explain it to me would take an entire semester and cause me to tear my hair out. But so if we can accept, unless you're thinking, it looks like you may have a way to explain it.
I can give a little hint. It's, when we say evolutionary game theory, think about game theory. How do you play Monopoly and win? How do you play various games? So it turns out you can look at different strategies that someone might have. I'm going to go for Park Place. I'm going to go for Boardwalk. I'm going to try to, there's all different strategies. And you can then write down mathematically, okay, if you take this strategy, what is the probability that you will do well against someone who's taking this other strategy?
And it's all about most offspring?
So the strategies are ways to survive long enough to reproduce. And so you can look.
Is everybody hanging on here and understanding? Every time I lose my fucking
feel free to
pop
say
out.
if you're hanging fingernails.
I hope that you guys are just really as interested in this as we are, and that you're just really focused on it. Okay, good. We're just going to keep going then.
Look at different strategies for playing the game of life. So, for example, some organisms will have millions or thousands of offspring. But they don't care about the offspring. Most of them will die. But if 1% of them make it, you're good. Humans tend to have just a handful of offspring, and we put a lot of effort into them. So those are different strategies. And so as you look, some strategies, for example, in perception. Humans really have focused in our evolution on vision and hearing, and less on smell and taste and so forth. Other organisms focus on things that we don't even have, like echolocation.
Okay, hang on. Who are you talking about, Mark? Are you talking about Hoffman and Tom? Yeah, Lee. And Laura, fascinating, good. I thought this was very, very interesting. Don't worry if you don't get all of it. I'd heard of game theory, evolutionary game theory. I just hadn't heard of this much. Okay, just gonna keep going.
In bats. So different organisms will take different strategies. The game of life is, how do I live long enough to reproduce? And how do I raise my offspring to maturity? Do I just make lots of them and let them fend for themselves, and most of them die, but a fraction will make it? Or do I make just a few of them and really help them for 20 or 30 years until they can go on their own?
Or more these days.
Or more those days.
So from evolutionary game theory's perspective, what is the most successful creature on planet Earth?
Probably bacteria.
Interesting.
Right? There's a lot more bacteria than there are
good answer.
Than us, and maybe viruses if they're more. So from that point of view, right.
Okay, I think we have to skip ahead. I just couldn't keep everything in. Yeah, I think we're just going to skip ahead to like 10 minutes. So, because otherwise, we're not even going to get through this whole thing anyway. But I wanted
So I'm
to.
glad you took the time.
Yeah.
What's fascinating to me is every species has its own Umwelt,
Yes.
which is a really fascinating concept. So I looked this up once, and every time I say this stat, I think I must be wrong because it just seems way too far off. But humans are able to perceive 0.0035%.
Umwelt, by the way, is it's like the environment, the way that you as a particular species can perceive the world. And as we have talked about in videos that we did, different animals are going to have this different environment, this different perception of reality.
Of the electromagnetic spectrum. And I was like, how is that possible? That's so, like, everything that we see and think of as the known world is 0.0035%. Right. That is like vanishingly small.
Exactly right. So our window on the world is trivial compared to what could in principle be available. And so the question that you can then ask in a technical fashion is, what is the probability that a strategy of seeing true structures about objective reality, would that strategy help you to survive long enough to raise kids? And so we can ask that as a technical question. Evolution has the tools to do that.
Laura and everybody else, this video is the very first one in the description below. And then there's other ones that I've watched underneath that. And like I said earlier, if you just type in Donald Hoffman in YouTube, you will come up with a plethora of videos to watch. He's been everywhere. He's done interviews with everybody for years. And so just look at the date and you can watch more recent ones or go back and watch early ones. But this one, I would watch the whole thing. I've watched it probably a couple of times by now.
And the key concept is something called a fitness payoff. So fitness payoff is like, if you're playing a game, there's a certain way that you get points in the game. If you're playing a video game, right, you have to shoot things down or avoid getting hit and to get points. And if you get enough points, you get to the next level of the game. Well, fitness payoffs, if you get enough fitness payoffs, what that corresponds to is you're surviving long enough to reproduce, and you don't go to the next level of the game, but your offspring and your DNA in your offspring go to the next level of the game. So here's the big idea. We can ask these fitness payoff functions that govern our evolution. They do depend on whatever the world is and the world structure, so they do depend on the world. They depend on the organism. You know, what's fit for me is not fit for a benthic fish. Being 5,000 meters under the water would kill me. It's just what the benthic fish wants. So the fitness payoffs depend on the true structure of the world. It depends on the organism, Hoffman versus a fish.
We're getting to consciousness and mind. Right now, it's just sort of like the pre-conversation, but you'll see that he does use consciousness. And we'll have that discussion when we get there, that it's really mind that he means. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I didn't realize I was muted because I asked you to pause once. I thought you just ignored me.
No, Philip, I would never ignore you.
Oh, that's all
never.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I thought you couldn't hear me over the video when it was playing.
No, I think I can. I'm going to play. Say something.
Okay.
Say
well, I
something.
had myself muted because I was going to answer Lee.
Okay, I can hear you, so that's good to know because that would be annoying. All right, we're getting back in here. What are we at? 12:19. Yeah, almost done with this little section. And this is interesting with the fitness payoffs. It's just the way he explained. This is the stuff that he studies. So, I mean, these aren't terms that we use. We don't think about these things. We just say it generally, that the reason that we don't sense everything is that we don't get all of reality, that we don't experience all of reality, is that we would be overwhelmed and eaten by a tiger. So,
And I think when he's talking about the fitness payoff functions, he's talking about mating, eating, fighting and feeding, all of that stuff. So it's kind of your survival
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
things, functions.
And okay, we're just gonna keep going.
The action, feeding, fighting, fleeing, and mating, and so forth.
Oh, there we go.
And you can then ask, what is the probability? And this is the key technical question. What is the probability that a randomly chosen fitness payoff function that's governing my evolution has information about the true structure of the world, right? Because it's that evolution tells us those fitness payoffs are what determine how your senses are going to evolve.
So what's the base?
Okay, so that question is, how are you going to have fitness functions that survive to the ones that tell you up the truth of reality? Are those necessary? That's where he's going with this, and we're going to skip ahead just a little bit to where he answers that, and that is at 14, 15. It's right about here.
People's intuition. It certainly breaks in my intuition when I think, though, that there has to be some sort of mapping. So the example that you've said many times, which I think is really on point, is if people are going to make fun of you, what they will say is, oh, you don't think any of this is real? Go ahead and step in front of that train and see if it kills you. Right. And of course, it's going to. So the representation of the train is pointing at something that will change your state from alive to dead.
That's right.
Now, whether all of that is so, again, abstracted from what's actually happening at a electrical level, I don't even know what to liken it to. But nonetheless, stepping in front of a train will flip you from alive to dead, whatever that means in the underlying reality. So do you think at all about, like, do you care what it's mapping to, or are you just like, it doesn't matter, it's too complicated, we're not there yet?
Well, I do care, and that's why I'm interested in this particular theorem, right? Because my interest is, I'm seeing a world of space and time and objects with colors and shapes and motions. How is that the true world? Is that the true structure of objective reality? Or is this as divorced from reality? Is what we're seeing as divorced from the fundamental reality as my Grand Theft Auto VR headset is from the voltages inside the supercomputer that's running it?
This is really good stuff, and I'm glad you're going to watch the whole thing. I have to keep pausing you guys because I can't show lots. Well, I have to keep doing that, which is a little bit annoying because it's so fascinating that you just want to keep going. But as Lee said, yes, you'll watch this whole thing later. I hope you do, because there is no way we're getting through this whole thing. And hi, Wojciech. Glad you could make it.
Which, I was going to say, Susan, I'm completely fine with going a little bit longer since we're at the end of the month stream, if you'd like to.
Yeah, that's fine. I have only time stamped the first, like, whatever we were going to do. Did Jan just come in? Hi, Jan.
Hi, Jan.
I'm so glad you're here.
Coming in.
Yeah, I was mentioning earlier, Jan, that you taught me how to do this screen sharing thing, and I'm still a little bit of a mess at it, but everybody is, being kind. So let's just keep going, because where are we? And we have so much to do. Are you guys enjoying it? Are you finding this interesting? Because Philip and I were just really, I was so hooked and focused on. I watched so many of his things, I just binged them, but it's been a while since I reviewed it. So yes, we're keeping going. Okay, Cassidy said keep going.
That's the simple question, right? So when I talk about things outside of space-time, it's just like, suppose someone had played Grand Theft Auto since they were 1 day old, and their parents had left them in a headset their whole life. And when they're 25, the parents say, guess what? You've been in a headset your whole life. And that person probably can't even, what could possibly be outside of my headset? I've lived my whole life inside this headset. And you pull it off, and you realize, oh wow, there's a whole world that's entirely outside of what you're in. That's the question we're asking. Has evolution shaped us with just a little headset, a VR headset, that guides adaptive behavior, but shows us none of objective reality? That's the technical question. And the answer is very, very clear. The probability is 1 that we don't see the truth at all.
Meaning 100%.
100%.
Okay, so if the probability is 100% that you are seeing a very false version.
Okay, we have to skip ahead like 15 minutes. It's definitely worth watching, but I cut it out because I think it was a very technical, or just not part of something I thought was important enough to put into what we were trying to get through. But again, I highly recommend watching the whole thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I really love that he uses the analogy of the VR headset, because what he's basically saying is that what we are experiencing is a data structure for something deeper, and that's what he's trying to figure out, is what is behind the so-called simulation of reality.
Yeah, one of the things that I have looked for is, there's other times when he says things where I get confused, that thinking that he doesn't think there's anything behind what we perceive, and I'm really curious. That's why one of the reasons I've watched a lot of his stuff. I want to basically, what I'm looking for him to talk about is, what is the form behind what it is that we're behind our experience. And I haven't heard anything so far that would lead me to say that he thinks of it anyway the way we do. But it's like watching him. And again, considering the amount of material that he's put out there, and how much I know about it, it's very small. So to make pronouncements that I understand what his position actually is, would be really false. But
And just one more quick comment. I see Rebecca says it reminds her of the allegory of the cave, which is really cool, because it's the same thing. They're talking about representations, just like the shadow representations on the cave wall, not being true reality. So
yeah,
good analogy.
that's what they're talking about now. But anyway, let's just go back to. I think we're picking up again. Where this is very interesting. Again, it can be a little bit confusing. He's talking about these data structures, representations. But anyway, pay attention. This is kind of cool.
This in our perceptions. The way we see it in our perceptions is, we have probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of fitness payoff functions that are governing our behavior. So what do we do with all that complexity? What we do is we group the fitness payoff functions into groups that are similar. And we take that and we make simple little data structures out of them. And those data structures are what we call objects. So this object...
Okay, so again, what he just said was, these data structures, these representations, are what we call objects, what we call things. And they're made up of these hundreds of thousands of fitness payoff functions. All right, so that
can sound kind of confusing, but he gets into that a little bit about, with the data representations that we call objects, the fitness payoff function is how that object benefits you, whether it's for mating or fighting or eating. And he gets into that a little bit.
One of my questions, and Philip, I don't know, like, what you think. What do you think a payoff fitness function actually is, like, ontologically?
That's a pretty interesting question.
That's what I'm kind of looking for. I want to hear some, like, because a lot of it is just very wordy. It's just words. I want to know what they mean. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. That's one of the things. I have a whole page of questions. Anyway, here we go. I'm going to turn on again.
Is good for drinking.
Can you, what is a data structure? When you say that it's an object, meaning my mind groups it so that I can differentiate the cup from the coaster from the desk?
Lee said, every time I click something, I don't know why, it screws up my comments. Yeah, but Lee, is that what he thinks? Like, I know what we think, but I want to know what he thinks. That's what I'm trying to figure out. So, keep your little critical thinking hats on.
Susan,
what?
I was going to tell you, when you click back on the video, it puts your chat behind. So if you make your window smaller so that one is not overlapping the other, your chat won't be able to go behind
Oh, Philip.
that. that window browser.
Philip, I love you. Thank you. Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
thank you
And
for
then you
that.
won't have to keep clicking for it to pop back
Thank you
up.
for that. I will. I'm not going to do it. If I start messing with the size of the window now, we'll be here for another 3 hours while I try to do that. But thank you, because next time I'll do that. I appreciate it. Okay, let's just get back into it.
What I'm saying is we're making all this stuff up as a simple way to represent the fitness payoffs and how to get them. So for example, when you're playing Grand Theft Auto, you're playing a game. If you looked inside the supercomputer, there is no red Porsche, there is no steering wheel, there is no gas pedal. In some sense, those are what I call simple data structures. They're coding for, the gas pedal, and pushing on the gas pedal is coding for, who knows, countless millions of voltage changes happening in exactly the right sequence in the computer. I have this trivial data structure, gas pedal, push on it, that triggers this whole other thing that I don't want to know about. It's really too complicated. So that's what I mean by these simplifying data structures. My steering wheel is this simple data structure that I can use to interact with who knows how many billions or trillions of voltages and make them do exactly the right sequence in the right order.
Could I say representation instead of data structure?
Sure, absolutely. Okay. Data structure is a computer science term, so computer scientists would be very happy with that, but representation is perfectly good. And so the idea then is, what evolution has done from an evolutionary point of view is it takes all these fitness payoff functions that govern us, that govern our survival, and that we need to respect in order to play the game of life, and we organize them. So an apple is an object. It's a representation of a bunch of fitness payoffs. For example, the apple, if I'm interested in mating, apple's no good. If I'm interested in eating, great. If I'm interested in a weapon, so. I mean, I could throw it at someone's head, but it's not going to do much damage. If I'm, so if
I want to read the comments, because I listen to this and I get a little bit frustrated. I think Hoffman's great. I compared to a lot of other people that you listen to, I think Hoffman's great because he's really working on understanding reality. But I get a little frustrated when I want to know what the thing is that he's talking about, and he doesn't go there. He just talks about like these fitness payoff functions or a perception of something, and I want to know, well, what is that thing? So so here, wait a minute. He seems to be concerned with the ambiguous nature of all the possible transforms to an object and sensory separation. Yeah, I agree, but he's not like defining what it is. Now, I saw some talk about amps and voltage and things, and I saw Lee say he doesn't actually talk about waves. Yeah, so I don't know, and it's a lot of this could be, yeah, you said, is it the limitation of materialism? I mean, it might be, but it could also be, a lot of it could be my limitations on understanding what it is that he's saying. So, he's a very smart man who has not taken a deep dive into Fourier transform. He might have, though. See, I don't know, Mark. That's the thing. That's why I keep watching his videos, because and I don't know whether it would be in there, because a lot of interviewers probably wouldn't ask those things. So,
It'd be great to talk to him though, and like ask all the deep dive questions.
Well, yeah. See, I have this. My difficulty. We must know. My difficulty is that I don't have like he talks about, physics and heavy math, and I don't have that, but I'm okay. The way of approach renders, yeah, the topical area garishly complex. Yeah. And in a lot of the interviews, he's trying to make it so that people can understand what it is he's talking about. Although that one that I saw that I want you guys to see, when he talks about what his current work is, unfortunately, he was describing it to a kid. It's a really young person who completely didn't get it. So if it had been Tom would have been asking him questions to have it explained more. So that was difficult. But he has a lot. We have a very straight, different sense of knowledge. Like, I know where I'm coming from, and I know the things that I want to know, but I don't necessarily speak his language, so we would have to get on the same page somehow. But anyway, I'm talking way too much. Let's go back to this.
But if I have a sword, well, for mating, no good. For eating, not really. I mean, I could use it to cut a coconut in half, but I can't eat the sword. For fighting, great, but not if you're fighting against a gun and things like that. So every object, and we can recognize, I would say, on the order of 30 or 40,000 different objects, basic kinds of objects. So what that indicates is that evolution has taken all these hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of fitness payoff functions, and it's not making one map from the world into our senses. It's making a bunch of different maps, and those different maps are what we call objects. And our high-level cognition, all it does is, I'm hungry. Okay, well, I won't be looking for tables. I won't be looking for the moon. I'll be looking for apples and bananas and things like that.
Yeah, but what are apples and bananas made of? Like, if they're not, if you're talking to a materialist, they'll tell you they're made of atoms, and then smaller things make atoms, and it's all just goes down to materialist stuff. But he's not that. He knows that space-time is not fundamental, and he has said, I think at some point Tom asks him, I think it's in this video, but if it's not space-time, then is it consciousness? Like, he tries to go there. Yeah, it is in this video. We're going to get to it. So if Donald Hoffman thinks that, right? So it's not material, it's mind, consciousness for him. Then what is the apple? That's where okay, I'll shut up. This is the stuff that I think about. Anyway, okay, where's the button? Here it is.
Those data structures, those representations that have high fitness payoffs for the action of eating. And so visual attention, paying attention to different objects, is our way of switching from this representation of fitness payoffs to this representation of fitness payoffs as I need to be able to survive long enough to reproduce. And so that's, this sort of technical, but the reason I bring it out is because this is brand new. It's gotten a lot of attention from Yale, and so it's an important thing from the scientific side to really lay to rest that there's not one mapping that's required from the world into our senses by evolution, even if we assume that our beliefs don't interfere with our cognition, our cognitions don't interfere with our perceptions. That doesn't entail that we have to have one mapping. It's just a false assumption. Once you let go of that false assumption, then you are opened up to realize that every object is just a data structure coding for a whole group of fitness payoffs. And that's how evolution deals with this.
Okay, so the reason that I find this so endless.
Okay, we're going to skip ahead again. We're getting to consciousness. All right, let's skip ahead a few minutes. Again, highly recommend watch the whole thing, because if you guys do, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. I would love to hear, what am I missing? What did you think about it? If you watch any other videos of his, please share.
Thesis is how different what you perceive is and what the world is like. And I know, and this is where it gets hard, because I think you would say, we don't know what's under space-time.
Right.
But what's your best guess? Like, as we strip away this layer, and this might be the time to talk about consciousness, but I don't want to lead the witness.
Right,
what do you, if it isn't space-time, stab in the dark for me. What the hell is it?
Well, I'll tell you what the physicists are doing on this, because the physicists are the ones who are saying space-time is not fundamental.
So it's there, it's a pointer, it's a representation, it's a data structure.
It's a data structure to something deeper. That's right.
But it happens to be the human brain, which is already a data structure. You're already making that up.
Exactly right.
But that data structure represents things through space-time.
Exactly right. That's our headset. Space-time is just our headset.
And it only goes down to is that the Planck length? I always
Yes.
hear you quote a size.
Planck length is 10 to the minus 33
So
centimeters.
that is what you're quoting.
Right,
And
exactly.
that's the smallest thing that we can measure?
Yeah, that's the smallest thing. That's the smallest scale at which space-time has any operational meaning. If you try to go smaller, space-time ceases to make any operational sense at all.
Because gravity insists that below that things have condensed to too fine of a point, it becomes a black hole?
Yeah, exactly right. You create a black hole.
Okay.
So, and if you think about it,
And we know that isn't true? Like, why can't that just be true? Smaller than that is a black hole. Yay.
well, we know we know that at the Planck scale, space-time stops and you get black holes.
So what's the problem?
Well, black hole is a singularity. It means we don't know what's happening. So you get infinities popping up.
But black holes are real, right?
They're real.
As a data structure.
They're real stopping points in our understanding.
But they're in the universe.
Well, they're.
I know this gets
There are-
complicated.
Hello, hang on. God, it's frustrating with the pop-up. Hi, hello, people coming in. Archetype 0 and Heyoki, hello. And there was somebody else that came in too, and I think I didn't say hello. And Morg, I'm glad you're here. I want to talk to you later about this. You guys, I don't think Morg is reading comments, by the way, because I think they're just listening. But I thought there was somebody else who came in that I didn't say hi to. I'm sorry. Hello, if I missed anybody. Okay, so we are. Yeah, he's talking about consciousness, and I think Tom is doing a good job, sort of asking questions and trying to get more clarification. So we'll just keep going.
Theories
the
about
universe
what
is a
black-
representation.
Oh yeah. So
That's why I want to start hitting myself
Penrose
with
and
a
others have
baseball
been
bat.
studying the properties of black holes, right? Penrose won the Nobel Prize very recently for his wonderful work on black holes. And so there's a lot of work that's being done to understand the properties of black holes. For example, the amount of information you can store in a black hole doesn't depend on its volume, only the surface area.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
Yeah, right. It's very, very strange. But that turns out to be true in everyday space. The amount of information that you can store in this volume here is not dependent on the volume. It depends on the surface area. That's the universe we live on. So that's led people to this holographic kind of idea.
Oh, every word out of your mouth. I'm like, we actually are in a simulation. We haven't even talked about the non-local, things are not locally real.
Right.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, because that's
I agree, Mark. Yeah, Tom's great, but he's coming from the materialist perspective, trying to understand what it is that Hoffman is talking about. So that's really understandable to me. Once you have lived with, with the information that the way we look at reality, you forget that other people are coming from a very, very different perspective. It's like the way you used to think, the old way you used to think. And, you don't realize that people don't understand the way you view reality now. So anyway, okay, we're going back.
the new Nobel Prize this year.
Which is insane and literally just says you're in a simulation and it's the same as rendering. And when you look at something, it renders. When you look away, it doesn't. And we can prove it mathematically.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Way too fascinating. We'll get to that. But first, I want to understand, like, black holes, the word real gets very slippery in this conversation.
Right.
But black holes are observable.
Yes, we
so
took
seems
a picture,
consistent.
right? So the idea is that the notion of space-time at, like, instead of 10 to the minus 33 centimeters, say 10 to the minus 40 centimeters, what would that mean? It has no meaning. There's nothing you can do with it. So black holes are fine. They're objects there that are at the end point of what space-time can do. But if we say, but I thought space-time was fundamental, that means I should be able to talk about what's happening at 10 to the minus 50 centimeters and you just cannot. There's no operational meaning. And in that sense,
So you're saying whatever is fundamental will be able to tell you exactly what's happening inside of a black hole.
well, or it will tell you that this whole framework in which black holes appear is the wrong framework.
And thusly, black holes are just a data structure for something else that is describable once you get outside
Once
of
you get out of
space-time.
And you know, it's hard for us to think outside of space-time. Like the
Yeah,
kid,
can we beat this point to death for a second? Because this one was a breakthrough for me when I realized I always thought of the Planck length as like so infinitesimally small that like we should all be in awe. And you're like that space-time breaks down that early is just ridiculous. And I was like, okay, that's a different frame of reference.
yeah, it's a very shallow data structure. If it was 10 to the minus 33 trillion centimeters that it broke down, I'd be impressed. 10 to the minus 33, we got cheated. This is a really shallow data structure. It's only 4 dimensions. I can't even imagine something in 5 dimensions. I can't even imagine a new color that I've never seen before. So we've been given this really, we think that we're, in many cases, we think we're the epitome of intelligence and the smartest thing in the universe. My feeling is we've been shortchanged. Really shallow data structure, only 3 dimensions of space, 1 dimension of time. We got a cheap headset.
And so
Okay. Again, we're going to skip forward.
We have a cheap
I know.
headset.
I like that too. We have to skip ahead. I didn't write down the things that what they're talking about here. I only wrote down the things for the timestamps that we're going to cover. It's all interesting though. And again, go back and watch it. Link is in the description for people coming in. I think let's see where this is.
It says what? Why? I wish we could see the whole thing.
Who said that?
Jan.
Oh, Jan. Yeah, sorry, Jan. But you know the links.
If you can see, it's 2 hours 13 minutes. But there's this video and probably 4 others listed in the description.
Yeah, I mean the first one I watched was longer than this one, and this is our favorite, at least my favorite so far, because I like this host in that he's not just nodding up and down and saying please continue. He's actually asking questions and trying to understand.
I really love this comment from Mark. He says the scientist here has it right, but it's a tough haul to communicate from his starting point to a general audience.
Absolutely, yeah, and I like Hoffman for he's very personable and he's humble. He's I've seen him talk about the new physicists who are studying the young physicists who are studying these structures outside of space-time that we're just about to find out about. I'm glad you're here, Joanna. I'm glad everybody's here. But he's known for saying how much what his limitations are, that other people are doing amazing, brilliant things. He's really a very down-to-earth person, and I like how he explains stuff. And I love the fact that he hasn't said it in here how he came to the realization or the knowledge that space-time is not fundamental. I've seen it in I think several of his other videos, and it's just I really like how he said no. We know that from quantum mechanics, and also that you can't. Nobody has a explanation for the hard problem of consciousness, and I love the fact that he's recognized those two things are very, very important for getting rid of space-time as being fundamental. What time is it? Okay. Oh, it's 10 o'clock my time. Okay. We're going to go on for a little bit more. So yeah, let's just keep going.
This chunk of electrical impulses, if we think of it as a shape or a pattern or a rhythm or however we're going to think of it, is that what we're saying?
Okay. That could be a helpful metaphor. And I've got another metaphor that may also try to help people on because that's an important point that you're raising.
This is good.
So suppose, here's another way to think about this. Suppose that I'm looking at a video and I'm seeing all these pixels, and the pixels are moving in really complicated ways. You know, there's the red pixels and green pixels and light pixels and dark, and I'm just and and I know that there's something interesting going on, and so I write down all these equations for the motions of these pixels, and but someone says, you know what, there is just this, I've got this little Rubik's Cube, and all I'm doing is rotating a Rubik's Cube, and but you're only seeing the pixel projection of, if you just could see this 3D object, you would realize how simple it is. But when you only see the pixels and see all the, then it's, oh man, I've got to model all the pixels moving on my screen. How do I do that? Well, if you can just let go of the screen, behind it there's this unified geometric object, the Rubik's Cube. And if you just see, oh, it just rotates rigidly, and that rigid rotation is the only motion I need. It's a rotation. Here I have to look at all the pixels. This pixel
So
moving
I'm
this
paying
way.
attention to the dots rather
paying
than
to-
the shape.
Space-time is
That's
paying
way better
attention
than
to the
my
dots.
example.
Right. So in space-time, we're
This is so cool. Space-time is paying attention to the dots, like the pixels on the screen. But if you refer to this shape outside of space-time, it makes everything much simpler for you to explain
Right.
stuff. And this is where you get into what makes him very excited and what I find really interesting. And he talks about the amplituhedron and the cosmological polytope and others, and it gets, for someone who's, if you're not a mathematician and you don't know that level of math, you don't worry about it. I just take
Right.
it. Yeah. Don't try to figure that out. I have looked these things up, but you don't have to know that. That would be great, but try to just hang on to the concepts that he's talking about.
And the same thing with the analogy of the TV, how he's saying we're hanging on to all of the pixels and all of the different representations of the pixels. It's the same thing with the analogy of the Rubik's Cube, where you're being focused on the outcomes or all the possibilities of the Rubik's Cube combinations from the rotations, where it's just an astronomical number rather than focusing on the actual shape behind the representations of the colors.
I'm sorry, I was looking at comments. So that was,
Oh,
yeah. Can I carry on? I didn't want to interrupt you.
go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
we're stuck on the video screen, and we're trying to model all the pixels moving around the video screen. And what the physicists have said, if you let go of the video screen, take it off, you see that these geometric objects like that Rubik's Cube are outside of it, and their structure is much simpler. Now, I'm not saying simple, but much simpler. But when it projects into this really, see, you lost information in the projection, right? That's why you have all these little pixels. You have a 3D object here, a two-dimensional screen. So you've lost. So now it looks really complicated. But
So
if you go
what's
back out
happening
there,
then when these things collide? They're making a new Rubik's Cube?
So
Or they're just rotating a shape that's already there? This is where I have no way to anchor myself.
well, so particles are things inside space-time, right?
Yes.
So when we look at particle interactions at the Large Hadron Collider, we're looking at the pixels,
Yep.
the motions of the pixels inside space-time. The amplituhedron and other structures that they're finding.
Okay, amplituhedron is something you say so fast. I've heard you say this a gazillion times, but I had to look it up.
Oh, right.
So an amplituhedron is a shape,
Yes.
a geometric shape.
Right.
In how many dimensions?
They can be in small numbers dimensions, but they can go to infinity. So
Lovely.
there's different kinds of different sizes of amplituhedra depending on how many particles you want to interact.
And that's our Rubik's Cube.
That would be the Rubik's Cube beyond the headset.
Yep.
And by the way, this is brand new. This was published in 2013. This is not even 10 years old. So this is all new stuff, this amplituhedron. So it's no surprise that people haven't heard of it, and many physicists haven't heard of it. It's truly remarkable. Quantum theorists, in fact.
And so what makes people think the amplituhedron is actually real? That we have detected the shape outside of the headset?
Well, I think that the really brilliant physicists would not say we're done. They would say we've taken a first step outside of the headset of space-time, and one of the first structures we found is the amplituhedron. That doesn't mean it's going to be the final answer. They're looking at other structures, something called the cosmological polytope. and surface hedra and so forth.
Cosmological polytrope?
Polytope.
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 What is that?
That
is
is
it another
something-
geometric shape?
It's another geometric shape that Nima Arkani Hamed, Juan Maldacena, and others, a lot of the work's been done at the Institute for Advanced Study and collaborators with the people there. And this is trying, see, the amplituhedron is primarily for flat space-time, in my understanding, so without gravity. But when you deal with gravity, and Einstein told us that sort of curves space-time, then things get a little more complicated. And in that case, I think they're looking at the cosmological polytope for more like cosmological kinds of predictions. So the amplituhedron. So, and I'm sure that they're saying that they're not saying that cosmological polytope is the final word. What's really interesting is they've already taken a step beyond the amplituhedron. So there's something called...
Meaning even that they don't think is fundamental, or just that it's part of the fundamental...
They think it's an important step outside of space-time, but what surprises the physicists is that the heart of the amplituhedron is something called a permutation, a kind of permutation called a decorated permutation. It's like shuffling cards, you're permuting cards. So it's a surprise that if you let go of space-time, things become simple. You get this amplituhedron, the math becomes simple, and then when you look at the amplituhedron and ask about its essential character, you find out that behind the amplituhedron is just permutations, decorated permutations, shuffling cards kind of thing. And so we're at this position. So this is only, in the last couple decades, right, that this has happened. The amplituhedron is 2013, so it's only 9 years old. So here we're at this really interesting position in science, in physics. I like to think of it like the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey.
I have to pause because I need to do that. And I'm looking at comments too. Okay, yeah, you guys found out what I just figured it was, this is Tom's set, so I figured it's got to be one of his things. Lee, you said something about fractals, and I don't think that's it, but again, but draw your own conclusions. I'm not sure. But this is interesting. What is coming up now?
Remember the scene? It was a great movie, yeah. And there's a scene where there's the monolith.
And I think that's kind of interesting.
It's just sitting there.
I'm sorry, you were talking. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
That's all right. I had myself muted at first, but I was saying he was interviewed in another video by a young kid, and I think it's fascinating that young kid was able to follow what he was saying, kind of, and hang on by his fingernails, so to speak.
Yeah, that's the video, and I have it. I think I put it below. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. I'll get that one to you. That's the one where he tells this kid what his current work is about. And I practically wrote it out word for word because it was so fascinating. And I really want someone to tell me whether I interpreted it correctly, because I think what he's doing, well, you know what? Let's talk about it at another time because we're running out of time. We could do another whole thing on him because I would love to discuss this. And I think he's trying to go from consciousness, mind, to this reality. It would be the big question for someone who has determined that mind is fundamental or consciousness is fundamental.
And Susan, if you want to go a little bit longer today, I
know we're going to. Yeah, we're already over. So yeah, we're okay, here we go.
Pregnant with meaning. And the apes are looking at it, they're afraid of it, they're
we're backing up.
Shuffling cards kind of thing.
He's doing the 2000
so we're at the
2001 metaphor. I thought this was interesting.
This position. So this is only, in the last couple decades, right, that this has happened. The amplituhedron is 2013, so it's only 9 years old. So here we're at this really interesting position in science, in physics. I like to think of it like the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey. Remember the scene?
Awesome movie.
It was a great movie, yeah. And there's a scene where there's the monolith. It's just sitting there, pregnant with meaning. And the apes are looking at it, they're afraid of it, they're beating on it, they don't know what to do with it. You get the sense that they know it's important, but they haven't a clue what it's pointing to. That's where we are. The amplituhedron and the decorated permutations are these monoliths outside of space-time. There's no dynamics. Who ordered this monolith, the amplituhedron, just sitting outside of space-time? It captures all these amplitudes, all the particle amplitudes. It captures the structure of space-time. Einstein's special relativity, quantum theory, and its so-called unitarity of quantum theory. So this is deeper. This thing is deeper than space-time. It's deeper than quantum theory. Quantum theory itself is not deep enough. This structure, the amplituhedron, this monolith, is beyond quantum theory, but it codes for quantum theory as a projection in space-time. So who ordered this? Like just in 2001: A Space Odyssey, the apes, you can imagine, what is this? Where did it come from? Why? What's it going on? We don't know.
I can imagine me asking that.
Yeah, well, everybody's asking it right now. It's just a static structure. Physicists like dynamics. We want to have equations of motion. We don't have that. We just have, here's the geometry, and here's behind it this permutation. They're just sitting there. Who ordered that and why? So that's where, but the attitude is not one of despair. This is really for the young geniuses who are doing this stuff. This is like fabulous, right? We're the first generation, not me, but the young physicists, the first generation that really gets to step outside of the headset of space-time. They've already found these monoliths, the amplituhedron, decorated permutations.
And just to really make that simplistic, shapes, and then the shuffling of the shapes.
Yeah, that's right. Some shuffle.
Tom is trying so hard. I feel the same way. I'm still trying to figure out, am I understanding it anywhere near what Hoffman means? So it's nice to see somebody else going through the same thing. But then I'm also trying to interpret, what does this relate to in the ontological position of what we know? Like, how, and I have a hard time with that, but I want someone to tell me. I want him to tell me, Hang on.
Are you meaning in terms of the decorated permutations,
yeah,
doing
like,
the shuffling?
What is that? What are these terms that he's using? What does that equate to?
Right.
And
when he's talking about the
amplituhedron,
when he's talking about the amplituhedron and the decorated permutations, shuffling the shapes of those, because it can be anywhere from very small to infinite, different, what did he say? Different shapes. Is that affecting the projection of space-time?
Well, I don't know that the amplituhedron projects space-time because it's two-dimensional. So I think that he said he already knew that there's other ones behind that that would, and he doesn't even know whether the cosmological polytope or the whatever other ones would, but they're leading toward whatever it is that they're looking for. Maybe one that would, it could be Mark, but I lost my train of thought.
Because when he was talking about the Rubik's Cube, he was saying that that would be similar to the amplituhedron projecting the different outcomes of the Rubik's Cube and the different rotations of the cube. But the geological shape behind that, or the geometric shape behind that, would be like the amplituhedron. That's why I'd love to know what he means.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I always come back to. I want to know what is the thing that he's talking about, and I want to know, how does that relate to, because sometimes it's just different terminology, it's just semantics, and you just need to know, what you're saying here equates to this thing, this concept. And absolute shapes understood as existing independent of space-time. Yes, that is what he's saying. I mean, I'm that's what it sounds like he's saying, Mark. It sounds like a psychedelic trip to you. Yeah. And the shuffling of, I do not understand that, the permutations that shuffles and makes up these things. Like, how does, okay. Anyway, let's just keep going. I mean, I love that they're working on this stuff. you know, yeah, okay, never mind. Just keep going.
Shuffling that codes for the shapes. There's a shuffling
that when you
codes for the
say
shapes.
codes for the shapes,
It
what does that
captures
mean?
it captures their essential structure. In some sense, even the geometry, the volumes and so forth, are redundant. There's this even simpler, more compressed description. Right now, the decorated permutation is the most compressed description that doesn't have any extra bells and whistles. The amplitude-hedron, in some sense, the positive Grassmannian that they used to build it and so forth, they have extra bells and whistles. In some sense, the amplitude-hedron boils it down to its essence. So it's shuffles, permutations. And the big question is, why? Why this? I mean, if you, in the beginning God said, why would God say that? What is the, so
Let there be shapes.
let there be the amplitude-hedron, let there be shuffles. That doesn't seem quite deep enough, right? It seems like there's got to be something beyond that, something dynamical. And there's no clue right now in the physics about a dynamical thing behind the decorated permutations or the amplitude-hedron.
Well, we just lost me, so I'm guessing that we lost a lot of people. So this is outside of the headset. So we're beginning to get to what we think may be these foundational pillars, but it's so early that nobody really knows what these are yet.
Right.
Let's go back to the quantum realm for a second.
Right.
So this is one of my pet peeves, that people in the mindset space tend towards magical thinking. And there's something about quantum entanglement, the quantum tubules in the brain or whatever it is that they think about collapsing and all that. One, is there anything, even inside the headset, is there anything to be learned from the quantum realm? Does the quantum realm point to anything else?
Okay, I think this was a very interesting discussion, but I think we're going to, I think we're skipping that. Oh, yes. He starts, this is a big, long discussion for like 10 or 11 minutes where they get into the local realism. And I think this might be where they discuss the recent Nobel Prize that physics won, the three people. And if you haven't looked into that, that's interesting as well. I again want to understand it more than, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of the physics. I don't have a lot of the physics background at all, but you can, if you, I forget where it is, who it was that I read an article on that walks you through it, get some understanding of it at least. And that is very interesting. I'm sure Morg knows more about that. But anyway, we're going to skip that though, because it's not something that we need right now. And we're going to go up to an hour. And again, every time I skip forward, I'm telling you guys, watch the whole thing. You don't have to watch the repeat of our live stream. Watch the actual video itself. Here, let me go back to here. Let me see if this is it.
So there's a simulation theory of Nick Bostrom and others where they say,
okay, yeah, he's just going to clarify something.
Just delete it. I render particles, I render space-time itself. Space-time itself doesn't exist except as a data structure that we use. And so...
Oh, I just have to stop here because again, this brings up so many questions to me. This wasn't part of the thing that we're watching, that we're going to talk about now. But he talks about when he looks at something and he renders it as he's perceiving it, and then it disappears when he looks away. I'm pretty sure that's what he means. And if I'm wrong, please somebody explain that to me later. I mean, or tell me that. But if that's true, then I'm really wondering whether what he thinks is behind the perception. If you're just having perceptions and you look away and that thing is no longer there, what is there? Like, does he know that like the way we see it, the way we view it, the waves are there. That's the objective thing that's there for everybody. If you're not perceiving it,
Right.
That's not a problem. It's still there. I don't know that that's what he's saying, and that's one of my big questions for him. But anyway, that was something that I didn't choose to put in for this. Let's just keep going.
It's now, in terms of a simulation, I should make a distinction between what we're saying here and a different kind of notion of simulation that Nick Bostrom has. So there's a simulation theory of Nick Bostrom and others where they say, look, this isn't real. It could be just some computer geek that did a program, and we're just creatures in the simulated world in this program. And it turns out that computer geek herself is just a program from someone else at a lower level. And there's this whole hierarchy all the way down until you get to some base programmer. But they assume that the base level is a space-time world. So they're still stuck on the headset. That kind of simulation theory isn't thinking big enough. You have to let and they're also assuming that programs can create consciousness, which is another story. No one's been able to show how that's even possible. So they're just not thinking big enough.
Okay, so the simulation theory that he's talking about, that he's mentioning, that is not what he's talking about, is the one that when a lot of people ask in Morg's streams, what do you think of simulation theory? And Morg explains, no, we're not living in a simulation. That's Nick I think his name is Bostrom. That simulation theory involves somebody somewhere creating a simulated reality and populating it with artificial, like not like robots, but representations and that is what Nick Bostrom is saying that we are simply created from some computer programmer type thing. And what Donald Hoffman is saying is, well, you have to go back to that layer of the person who is behind the simulation that we would be characters in, and that person could be in a simulation theory as well. Simulation.
So do you mean kind of like the Matrix, how there's the architect that creates the Matrix and there's all these people in that?
But it could also be that thing where it's like the turtles, you could have layers and layers and layers of it, because that person could also be in a simulation, and then that person could be in a simulation, and you go all the way down to the base level. But when you get down to the base level, what Morg explains and what Hoffman is saying here is, eventually you get down to the major creator, right? The base creator. But that person is still in space-time. So you haven't exited space-time on a basic level, right? You're still there. The other issue that Hoffman said, and he said it very quickly, was that consciousness, if somebody creates some kind of a computer characters, you couldn't imbue them with consciousness. So if we were such characters, right, we wouldn't be conscious, and yet the theory states that yes, we would. Somehow we would have consciousness, because it would be so complicated, it would be so complex that we would be imbued, or I don't know what the right word would be, but we would have conscious, it would become conscious. And we know that that's not possible, that you cannot have consciousness appear out of something material. Now, Hoffman says it, he just said it, but he said it so fast, and I just wanted to pause and make sure that everybody caught that. So that kind of simulation theory is not what Hoffman is talking about. He's talking about this VR headset thing. The word simulation comes into it, but he's clarifying that it's not this other kind of simulation theory that's been, already kind of debunked as not possible. All right, I hope everybody got that. All right, let's just carry on again.
You've got to let go of space-time at the base of the entire hierarchy of simulations to really get where the physicists have gotten.
There you go.
Space-time itself is merely a headset. So the standard simulation theory isn't thinking big enough. It's still stuck in the headset.
As we strip away the headset, is local realism going to remain false, or will there be something, a better way to ask it, when we strip away the headset?
Okay, I'm sorry. I think we're skipping this part again. Everything I said before, I'm still saying about watching it. Okay. Oh no, I'm sorry. We are going to continue on. It's just a different timestamp.
Is God still playing dice?
I'll put it this way. As scientists making theories, we will always come up short. We will always have a place where we say in our theory, this is where our knowledge stops. And that's what we call the assumptions of our theory. So every scientific theory says, if you grant me these assumptions, I'll explain all this wonderful stuff. But you have to grant me those assumptions. And I can't explain those assumptions. Like even Einstein, he said, grant me that the speed of light is constant for all observers, and grant me that the laws of physics are the same for all people moving in uniform motion. If you grant me those two things, then I can do all this wonderful stuff. And that's the way all scientific theories work. Grant me this assumption, these miracles.
Because we don't yet understand these things.
Well, and it's also, I think, intrinsic to what it means to be a scientific theory. So there's no escaping this. A scientific theory, there is no theory of everything. That's a flat-out statement. There can never be a scientific theory of everything.
Because of Gödel's incompleteness.
Gödel's incompleteness.
Okay, here we go. We're not going to get into this, but I wanted you guys to see that Hoffman is one of those people who believes that there is no way, that there will always be something that we can't explain, that we can't account for. And in that way, he is definitely like the majority of scientists. All right, I just want to move on because I think I have two more things time-stamped. I don't know how long this is, but we're getting into consciousness again, so it's gonna pop forward a little bit. Elise, I'm glad you said you're gonna watch it. I know that you will love it. 121.50. Okay, here we go.
And for some reason, having feet in both realms is really what we're up to, what this is all about.
Okay, so let's push into that.
Yes, Mark, I agree with you. He, when I talked about his humility before, that's kind of what I was talking about. He's really good that way. I like that.
He doesn't try to boast that he has all the answers.
No, and he also often will say, he knows what it is that he's studying, but he also knows there's so much that he doesn't know, but that other people are studying, and he is very excited for those people to be doing whatever it is that they're doing, and I love that about him.
A little bit. So this takes us into consciousness. Never been enamored with the consciousness debate, but the way that you propose some interesting ways of looking at it, I do find intriguing. So you've got this idea that Gödel's incompleteness theorem says that it's this infinite thing, and that there's always going to be more to explore, that you will never be able to have a theory of everything. And when you ask yourself, why would this be the case, or how does that tie into consciousness? And maybe I'm getting this slightly wrong, but my interpretation of what you said is that it's possible that, given that consciousness is basically exploring itself, and we are all of the permutations that it must run through to basically have the negative take. I know that not to be me, and that helps me understand who I am. How close am I getting?
That's I think, a very, very good first approximation, with the proviso that we understand now, based on what we talked about in Gödel's incompleteness theorem, that everything that we are saying now are just words. And they're only pointers into a realm that's unlimited and infinitely beyond anything that even our words can point to. So even when I talk about consciousness as being more fundamental than space-time. But even then, if I...
Oh, yeah, there we go. Consciousness being more fundamental than space-time. And again, I believe he means mind. And he just uses consciousness because that's something that a lot of people use in place of mind.
You step back and go, okay, to be really consistent, I have to admit that even a theory of consciousness is not a theory of everything, and it may not even be the right language. It's just the next baby step in our scientific
How could consciousness be more fundamental than space-time? Wouldn't the thing that the local realism, which requires you to look at something, state that if consciousness were more fundamental than space-time, it would already be observing itself?
So the way to think about it is, maybe an analogy is, you're wearing a headset.
Yep.
And you're playing Grand Theft Auto again.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no real car out there. The steering wheel is just in your head. It's all in your perceptions. All of that is in your... So the entire physical world, quote unquote, of Grand Theft Auto is made up in your mind, made up in your consciousness.
So my consciousness, or whatever consciousness is creating the virtual world.
That's right. The way I think about it, and again, words have limitations, but the math model we're working on consciousness indicates that there is one unlimited consciousness that cannot be modeled, but we can talk about projections of it. That one big consciousness can have projections, and we're having a projection into a 4D space-time.
Okay, so again, I'm always like, whoops, I just closed the chat completely. I'm always struggling to know whether my interpretation of what he's saying is actually what he's saying here. Let me go back to here.
Yeah.
That's something that I need to restore this chat, and I don't know how to do it. No, pop out chat. Okay. Now I just have to go back. I'm sorry. I'm taking you guys with me. Whoops. Because you see everything I see, and I apologize. goddamn, grab the fucking thing. No.
Oh yeah, you've been having problems with your cursor, haven't you?
No, it's not that. It's that fuck. I'm sorry. Restore chat. Here, pop it out again. I don't know how to grab it. I'm there. There it is.
There
Fucking
you go.
hell. I'm sorry. I just hate wasting this time because I want to hear. Okay, let me go back to here. All right. Does the screen look good again?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I think we were in the infinite regress thing. Again, I struggle to figure out whether what I think he's saying is actually what he's saying based on the fact that we have different words for things. And that's an issue that I often have. That's a me issue. It's not just in this situation. It's something that happens to me a lot. If I don't hear something in a way that is familiar to me, it can be not even that far off, I will often, go off into a different place and not really understand whether or not we're on the same page. So I have extra difficulty trying to figure this out, but I still want to know. And that's why I'm always interested in what other people have to say to let me know whether, yes, he is actually saying this thing that you think he's saying, or no, you've missed it completely. So hi, Lucifer, and hi, whoever's coming in. I'm going to back up just a second.
State that if consciousness were more fundamental than space-time, it would already be observing itself?
So the way to think about it is, maybe an analogy is, you're wearing a headset.
Yep.
and you're playing Grand Theft Auto again. But there is no real car out there. The steering wheel is just in your head. It's all in your perceptions. All of that is in your, so the entire physical world, quote unquote, of Grand Theft Auto is made up in your mind, made up.
Okay, but you see, here's what I want to know. What is making it up? Does he believe that this consciousness, and again, we're going to go to the next question I have in a second, but is it the consciousness as a whole, which is what he thinks it is making up the perceptions that we're having? Like, what's the mechanism for how this is working? And
How
maybe
does he tie it all together?
well, yeah, and I just want to know, is he thinking the same thing that I'm thinking? Anyway,
In
carry
your
on.
consciousness.
So my consciousness, or whatever consciousness is creating the virtual world.
That's right. The way I think about it, and again, words have limitations, but the math model we're working on consciousness indicates that there is one unlimited consciousness that cannot be modeled, but we can talk about projections of it. That one big consciousness can have projections, and we're having a projection into a 4D space-time.
Okay, so Mark, yeah, all right. So you think that he's thinking the same thing that we are, that everything is made, everything comes from the consciousness. Now, he just said that there's this one giant consciousness and then there's these projections. Do you think that he thinks it's kind of, and Philip and I were talking about this before the live stream started because I'm really curious, does he think that it's kind of like the ocean? There's one giant ocean and then there's these little, like, little rivers of the same thing, but just coming up, and those would be individuals? Because that's not our situation. We have individuals, right, that together make up the whole. So I think he's at the I agree with you there. I think he's at the perimeter of that too, but there's a huge difference between the ocean, where everyone is simply a projection of the same thing, or individuals that are complete units made up of the same stuff, like we all have the same contents, basis waves, right? And then together we make up the one thing, the oceans. That's a very different thing, and I don't know what his view is on that. I have a guess, but I don't want to say it yet. So anyway, let's just keep going.
Format, and there's a Tom projection and a non-projection, but we're just projections of this one unlimited consciousness that's utterly outside of space and time. And this is probably not a particularly sophisticated projection. As I was saying, 4D space-time only goes to 10 to the minus 33.
Okay, so I have another question. I'm sorry, Philip. This is what happens.
That's okay.
So
these are interesting questions,
okay,
interesting thoughts.
So when he says that, okay, so we have this cheap version, we have bad headsets. Do you think that what we consider the holos, right, is just one of possibly infinite different, it would be like a multiverse thing? Well, no, it wouldn't be multiverse in the sense that every time somebody made a different decision from here, a new universe is created. It's not that thing. But is there another holos that has a better headset? Do you think he thinks that? That's what I want to know.
I'm not 100% sure, but it's an interesting question.
Yeah, listen to what he says, and tell me if you think that, because I kind of inferred that maybe he thinks that.
One unlimited consciousness that cannot be modeled, but we can talk about projections of it. That one big consciousness can have projections, and we're having a projection into a 4D space-time format, and there's a Tom projection and a non-projection, but we're just projections of this one unlimited consciousness that's utterly outside of space and time. And this is probably not a particularly sophisticated projection, as I was saying. 4D space-time only goes to 10 to the minus 33 centimeters. Pretty trivial. So this is consciousness not being too serious. This is like a trivial projection, but it's doing whatever it needs to do. We're doing some science. We're talking. We're learning to love each other. Which maybe, who knows? That might be the big thing. Maybe it's learning to know yourself beyond any concepts and to know.
Yeah, I mean, that much we agree on, that this is us as the giant mind, the whole thing.
So
I'm sorry, go on.
Going back to your question about the VR headset and the Holos, I don't think he thinks that the Holos itself is in its entirety the VR headset that's old or outdated or not as good. I think he just means our perceptions are so limited that it's like having a old VR headset that's not as good.
Oh, so
because our perceptions are limited, we have not a faulty headset, but a older model, so to speak, so that we can't perceive it as well as if we had better perceptions.
He means our avatars. Our avatars are limited.
He's talking about our perceptions, and when we have the VR headset on, we're perceiving that experience through what he says is an older model headset or a bad headset. So if we had better perceptions, or if we perhaps saw more of the bandwidth of light, maybe that would be equivalent to having a better headset.
But he's talking about the level of the Planck length, 10 to the minus 33, right? So that's not our avatars.
It's very interesting to think about.
Okay.
I'd love to ask him.
I would too. I mean, I just, the more I watch, the more questions I have. Anyway.
That everybody else is really you under a different avatar, and to learn to love. I mean, I don't know what the final answer is, but this is the kind of question that comes up and the kind of answer that comes up.
That feels a little bit, wishful thinking isn't the right way, but that feels like a very specific to you prognostication.
Absolutely. It's beyond the math.
Yeah, when I hear you describing that, I think of war games and Jacob learning like, oh, there's no way to win at thermonuclear war. The only way to win is to not play. Great ending to a movie. But like, when I think about, okay, wait, why would consciousness, this grand consciousness that the math seems to point to, why would it need to understand itself? Why would it need to discover love? It's like, and I think about this a lot, and we talked about this in the last time we were together. I was saying, when you've got a machine and you're trying to like get AI to do something, you have to give it directives. You have to tell it to do something. But somebody had to tell it to do that thing. So who is telling consciousness, oh, you should care about love?
Well, and I completely agree with you, Tom. I think that the things I just threw out should probably be thrown out. Right, but the idea is, we don't have good ideas in this space. So the reason when I put these ideas out, I'm not wedded to them in the least. But I'm saying better to have something on the table that we can say, that's not it, than to have nothing on the table. Because at least we can say, okay, that's not it, but so why isn't that it? What's wrong with that? And then we can try to play with it and say, well, how can we get something better? So I put some bad pieces on the table because I don't have anything better to, so it's poverty of my imagination. But I'm hoping by putting bad pieces on the table and having people go, no, that's not it, I would go, yeah, that's not it. So what is it? What is a better idea? But of course, that's a never-ending process. Gödel.
Okay, I'm going to stop. This is going to be, that's it. And we're not going to look at it anymore because I have to say something. That was as far as I had gotten because we're already, we're already way over and we need to do our secret. However, I took this last little bit because notice how Tom said what or who is giving the directives, and that is something that is very common when for people to ask. For people are so used to being conditioned into thinking that there has to be a giant there has to be a giant brain, there has to be a giant entity, you know, and a lot of people for that it's God behind existence. And Tom just said it so perfectly there, that it basically saying I can't imagine that there isn't one. And I think that this is something that a lot of it's a wall that a lot of people hit, and why they believe there has to be a God, because what they don't understand, even when we say it's us all together, that's what exists, we often, and I see comments a lot in Morg's live streams even, where they're like, I get it, there's no God, there's nothing that, well, I think that they don't really understand that that means there's nothing external, but I get it, there's no God, there's us. But you know, who's in charge then? Who's running it? There's, you know, intelligent things happening. Who's behind that? And I think that understanding that that evolution is an unconscious process. It's not being mindfully directed until we attain consciousness, which again, takes a long time. And it's only when we attain consciousness that we can then start taking control over what it is that we do. But before then, it's not like you have to have this external God running things and designing things. That again, I guess that relates to that. People who say there's the intelligent design, so there must be someone who intelligently designed it. Anyway, yeah, Rebecca, there cannot be a God, because then you're left with the question of who created God. The way to look at it is, I mean, there is God. That's us. And we aren't created. We are eternal. There's just nothing, there's nothing outside of us that created us. We are that eternal thing, right? We are the everything that exists. And the holos, this shared realm, is an unconscious process of evolution until we get to that point where we're conscious, as I said, and then we can take over. And this is why it's so important to get to this point where we can then say, wow, we understand the mechanism of reality, how reality works. And we can look around and say, specifically here on our planet, that it sucks. It's so bad, especially right now. And I'm not going to start ranting about the condition of the world, but that's when we have to realize we're in charge of this. There isn't somebody out there who's going to fix these things. We can't, right, for all the reasons that we always talk about, we can't look to some outside force to fix it, or to allow us to ignore what's going on so that we can then get to that paradise, whatever, afterward, and that'll be the important thing. No, this is what we have to do now for us. So I'm going to end it there. Philip, do you want to do some wrapping up? Because I've just been babbling.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, we just really wanted to show this video to you, even though we couldn't show the whole thing, because it's fascinating to see scientists, especially people like Donald Hoffman, getting closer to how we see reality. And so it's interesting to hear him kind of piece all of this apart. And I kind of feel a little bit like Tom Bilyeu, where, at points I kind of fall off and I have to go, huh? And you really kind of have to analyze what he's saying. And yeah, I wish we could show you guys more. There's so many videos with Donald Hoffman, and this one's quite long. So I know we've said it 100 times to go ahead and rewatch this video if you're interested, but we may even do another stream on this topic and maybe look at some of his other videos, because there's just so much, so many questions to ask about what his understanding is and how to kind of reconcile it with our Hyperion understanding of reality.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave. You're welcome, Archetype Zero. Absolutely. I'm glad you guys liked it. I'm glad you liked it, Ren. I'm gonna leave you guys with a couple thoughts. Thanks, Rebecca. Please do watch them. If you're gonna watch anything, watch this one. And I recommend watching it from the beginning. I'll tell you right now, we're at an hour and a half. If you want to,
And take notes. It's
yeah,
helpful.
I have pages of notes. If you want to start from this point, I recommend you go back to the beginning. But if you want to start this point, we're at the about an hour and a half point. Take notes. Think about the stuff that we talked about. If you see something or interpret something or have some insights, please consider posting them as comments on the community wall. I know we noticed that we hardly ever use that. I usually only post the supporters live stream there, but please post any comments you want about it, and ask questions, and we could have a discussion in there. I think that would be really interesting.
Also, speaking of the supporters only live stream, we have a couple things to talk to you guys about in there, and you can ask us more questions. We're going to talk about our next video that's going to be released, and so I know we've kind of gone a lot longer than we usually do, but it's just so fascinating, talking about this stuff, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it. It seems like you did. So if you would like, come over to the supporters only live stream and we'll do some more talking and kind of have a casual hangout.
Yeah, so look on the community board for the link. I usually forget to do this, but thank you so much to all of our supporters.
And everybody who super chatted and
thank you.
Their membership.
Oh, thank you for the you guys who actually gave memberships. I love it when that happens because it allows more people to come to The Secret. And also thank you to everybody just for coming, because it makes the discussions more fun, and we love hanging out with you guys. We may try to do, I was going to try to talk Philip into possibly doing another live stream in a couple of weeks so that we do more than one a month. Life has been absolutely bananas for both of us. But we'll try, especially if we have lots that we want to talk about.
For sure.
Yeah. So, we're gonna pop off, and, for everybody else, we'll see you in, we'll be in The Secret in a minute, but, for everybody else, I hope to see you on Monday at Morg's, live stream. Oh, Mark.
And also Jan is going live Monday too, right?
Is Jan doing live streams on Monday still? I thought it was Wednesdays and Fridays only. But Jan, if you're in, please put in your information. Mark, put in your link. And thank you, Joanna. Yeah, really.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No, Wednesdays and Fridays. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Mark, put your link in. As always, Mark, please let us know when you are having another video out. And if we do a live stream in a couple of weeks, sort of mid-month, I was wondering if on this one, on the next one, Mark wanted to come on. And there you go. There's Mark's Hyperion Midnight. If you're not subscribed, and there's Jan, Mindful Monad. Go and subscribe to them. And yes, okay, Mark, good. I'm glad that you're available at this time. So let's look at possibly something. There's always something to talk about in a couple of weeks, and hopefully we can do that. Joanna, you can watch the beginning, but I highly, highly recommend just watching this video because I really want to know your guys' thoughts on it. All right, that's it. I could just go on forever, but we're going to pop off, and we will see you in the supporters live stream in a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining with us.
Telepathy streams. The telepathy stream still going to happen? Is that is not for me. That's for somebody else. Who's doing a telepathy stream? I have no idea.
I don't remember talking about that, but Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. So already happening. Okay. So anyway, we'll see you. We'll see you guys in the supporter. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, I'm stopping sharing, and I have to figure out how to figure out. Oh yeah, there it is. End stream. Okay. Bye.